The bottom line.
So first of all, my name is Trent Simmons. I am from the United States, Alaska, Maryland, and then Colorado, but lived all over. Came to Europe 5 years ago, met my wife, and we are now married, living in Zurich with a 3-year-old. I run two different NGOs. First, I joined GBO just over a year ago, and been happy to help out Nad a little bit with recruiting. And yeah, he's been doing a great job growing GBO Zurich. So apart from that, I run two different nonprofits. The first one is about 7 years old and uses the sport of ultimate Frisbee to teach conflict resolution and gender respect all over the world. For those of you who aren't familiar with that sport, it's a non-contact sport that is similar to football, soccer. Instead of kicking a ball, you're passing a frisbee back and forth. It is unique because it is the first sport without referees to ever gain Olympic recognition. So it's played in over 120 countries and has a pretty good chance to appear in the Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028, again, without any referees on the field. So that was really the foundation of the first nonprofit. Is we would go into new countries introducing this sport, but always saying this is not just a new sport, this is a new approach to sport. And we would talk to youth. We did a lot of work bridging gaps in society, a lot of times with this message of, if world-class athletes who have been training their entire adult lives to compete for a world championship, if they can hold themselves personally accountable for knowing the rules, following the rules, and resolving all disputes themselves without any type of external third-party authority coming in and saying you're right and you're wrong, if they can do it with that much on the line, what's your excuse for not being able to do it with everyday daily matters? And that is also what led to the second nonprofit. The first one is called 10 Million Discs. You're welcome to check out the website. I'll put that in the chat here in a little bit. The second one is called the Spirit of the Game Foundation. So Spirit of the Game is actually the very first rule of Ultimate Frisbee. All sports have a code of conduct attached kind of as an appendix to the rules. The behavior you hope will come about from people playing that sport. But because there's no referees, it is the prerequisite for the sport to work in Ultimate Frisbee. So the code of conduct is actually called Spirit of the Game. So that's really what we've been doing for the last couple years with the new foundation, is exploring how these principles might apply in other areas of society. So we have four different pillars because we learned some lessons from the first nonprofit and from our partner NGOs when we started the second one. So our goal was always to make sure that we didn't fall into the typical nonprofit trap of what we call being beggars, of always being dependent on asking individuals to donate money or asking or trying to get grants. If anybody's ever worked in the nonprofit field, you know a lot of effort goes into getting grants, and a lot of time gets wasted sometimes, like if you're not able to get grants. So it can be a very precarious existence, and that's the simple reality for most small nonprofits. Is their first priority is simply survival, making sure that they're actually going to be in business a year from now. We wanted to make sure that we were able to create a diversified revenue stream. So we actually have four different pillars that we all have different teams working on. Those pillars are, first, the conventional nonprofit work that does go out and applies for grants and runs programs specifically like that. The second is an impact network. We do a ton of networking, just reaching out to individuals and companies around the world that are generally fall into the following description of trying to disrupt some type of dysfunctional system. We're looking for people that are trying to do business differently, trying to run their nonprofit differently, working in academia, pushing the boundaries, basically looking for people that can use some help through a network to take their ideas further. Our third pillar is an impact coaching network. And that's what I'll circle back to. So I'll skip over that for now. And then our fourth pillar is actually a social movement. So Spirit of the Game has it embodied deeply within the worldwide ultimate Frisbee community. So in that sense, it's way bigger than just us as a foundation. But what we're doing is we're taking these basic core principles and we're trying to create what we call the world's first crowd coached life philosophy. If everybody thinks back through history, most major movements, religions, philosophies have all come from a single individual or a small group. And the problem is, if the founder dies, then either the philosophy dies with them, or it becomes rigid, and people say, "Oh, that well, the founder thought it was that way, and that's how we have to follow everything." What we want to do is have something that comes from a lot of different individuals, that takes a lot of different perspectives, and is growing, something that can evolve with times and still be relevant in society 100 years, 200, 500 years from now. So that's kind of the long term thinking of the organization is let's take a philosophy with its core principle of personal accountability and being continuously introspective, and let's see what all the people in our network have to say about that, how they can help to define that. But as I said, we're in a business network, so I'm going to talk now about our business offerings. So this is probably going to be at some point split off as its own for-profit division of the organization, but with the express goals written into the bylaws that the organization only exists to support the nonprofit. So rather than a typical for-profit company launching a foundation as kind of a marketing arm, we want to go the other direction, but still be able to operate in both spheres. Our typical offerings we started first on the corporate side. We were about to be started with Google in April here in Zurich. And then, as we all know, something happened in the world that we had never seen before. So all of our live coaching has still been put on hold, but those conversations are still ongoing. What we will be doing with them at some point is running workshops that at the first level. So just team building workshops, taking these basic principles and seeing how they can influence the culture of the company. At the higher level, there's also leadership development that really teaches executives and other leaders how they can start with a renewed sense of personal accountability rather than asking their employees to start. And then we'll have company-wide offerings. So these are just drop-in sessions that happen every week on a regular basis. Sometimes there'll be a series of special topics that 3 or 4 weeks we'll be covering. Maybe it's gender equality for a session. Maybe it's again work-life balance. So there's a variety of different topics that we can cover, all kind of tying back in again and again to this as a different type of life philosophy. We also have what we call creative impact. So the way that we define that term is sustainability equals do less harm. Impact equals do more good. Creative impact equals do good more efficiently. So rather than just spending more money to try to solve a problem, look for the networking effect, what an individual, the people they might know, the business ecosystem that surrounds them. So one very basic example of this, and anybody who wants to hear more about this is definitely welcome to contact me afterwards, and I can share additional links. But a very basic example is, so say for example, you have a furniture company and the owner's sister has cancer. So he decides his company is going to donate money to cancer research. That's great. It's definitely needed. It's a worthy cause. The problem is if he then tries to go to his competitors or his suppliers and say, I want you also to help support cancer research, they're going to say like, yeah, I mean, because we like you personally or we like doing business, we will make a small donation. But there's no resonance there. There's no ability to really tap into his extended network for that. Whereas if he had chosen to tackle, or she had chosen to tackle tree farming, sustainable tree farming, that's something that makes a lot more sense for a furniture company to be involved with, because then they can really tap into their suppliers, their competitors. They have a chance to change industry standards, things along those lines. Uh, and also, kind of just tying back into the creative impact, a lot of times companies don't ask their employees what they think the company could be doing, because companies there's lots of ideas there, and then part of the reason they don't ask is they don't have time to really pursue these ideas. So with that impact network that I mentioned that we're building earlier, we'll have the ability to come in and do brainstorming with a company, whether it's the employees, whether it's with the executives, or whether it's even with the board of directors. So if they have an idea, most likely we're going to know somebody else somewhere in the world who's also working on a similar idea, who has already done something like that. So now this thing that was kind of like, hey, it'd be cool if we could do this, but we have no idea how. It's like, oh, okay, it'd be cool if we can do this, and now we know exactly how, or we can join a collaboration of others. Part of that is for established companies. We also have a special program just like that for startups. With the, if anybody's ever had this conversation with a startup, what their positive impact on the world is going to be, unless they're specifically a social entrepreneur, the answer is typically, we don't even know if we're going to succeed. If we make money and if we're successful, then we're going to worry about how we can do some good in the world, which is pretty reasonable stance to take, or at least it was until recently. Over the last 5 years, the consumer demand for having an impact from the companies that you're purchasing from has just kept growing and growing. And it's not a trend. It's not something that's starting to fade. It just keeps accelerating. So right now, if you're a venture capitalist and you're investing in a company that doesn't have some type of social impact, that doesn't have at least a story about the good that they're also doing, it's probably not a good investment for the future, for 5 years from now, that future marketplace. The final thing I'll wrap up here with, and happy to answer all questions, of course, is the new program that we are rolling out next year that was mentioned in the broadcast for this event. Is we, as I mentioned at the beginning, as an NGO, wanted to make sure that we had a diversified revenue stream, and we've realized there's a lot of other possible partners like that. So rather than us just going out and trying to find clients for these coaching services ourselves, we are now partnered up with our first partner NGO here in Zurich, that they can now ask their business supporters, their ecosystem, to refer business to us, and a percentage of all of the coaching fees will go to that nonprofit. So that was our initial proposal to them, and they took a look at it. They said, you know what? This looks really good, but it doesn't go far enough. We want our staff to be trained as coaches, because we have a background in this. We have this, we have the experience to do this, but what we don't have is a book of business. We don't have the coaching materials. We don't have a life philosophy behind our organization. So we're like, okay, that's totally fine, because that frees us up to just go out and partner with other NGOs. So that is kind of the main, I guess, takeaway from this. Any individual, any GBO member who's interested in becoming a coach with us, that's definitely a possibility. We're going to be rolling out online training sessions in the new year, but we're also looking for new nonprofit partners, ideally that have some type of overlap with our main work. But it doesn't necessarily have to be, as long as an NGO has a strong business ecosystem that they want to ask for referrals rather than just always asking for money. That's a potentially good partner for us. And then ideally, if the NGO staff has the ability to get trained as coaches, that's a bonus, because we're more than happy to train coaches rather than just doing all the coaching ourselves.